Welcome to another segment of provocative conversations destined to provoke further thought and spark greater questions regarding God, church, and the religious establishments of both the past and the present. I am the proud heretic, Mr. Provocateur himself. Hello, Mr. Provocateur here, provoking you to greater thought, greater insight, greater conceptual productivity, greater perspectives. Again, I am dealing with the generalities of this season, this pandemic season. I would call this segment of teaching, this topic, this subtopic of teaching, the divine generalities of the pandemic season. The divine generalities of the pandemic season. This is not necessarily speaking on any particular group of people as much as it is given the basic generalities of this season. There are specific groups that I will deal with, and you will see the recordings of those. I will put those out as well. Perhaps by the time that you hear this, they will all be out. There will be multiple recordings here, because God gave me a lot. So let's go on into the generalities of this season. Nothing specific, everything specific, but yet everything in general, because we have more specific details about particular groups, such as the church, such as politics, such as the economy, such as the world in its systems and versus the United States in its systems, such as the president of the United States and the political arena within the United States. So we have specific areas, specific groups of people that we will deal with. But we'll get to those as we get to them, unless you choose to skip and go into an area or a topic that interests you. I don't know how you do it, but I must put it all out, knowing that there will be some, perhaps many, who will not agree with what I'm saying. Well, I can't make you agree with what I'm saying, but what I can do is just tell you what God is saying. If you decide to not believe it, then that's on you. That's between you and God. But as for me, I know it to be true from my experience. We all can miss at times. However, I do my utmost to get as precise and as exact or clear as I possibly can when God is speaking to me, when I hear that speaking within me. I can't fully explain it. Not knowing where people are in their understanding with God, how can you properly explain something so spiritually in depth and deep? It's hard to frame the proper words around something that intense and intimate when you don't even know where the people you're talking to are as it relates to God in their understanding. So I'll leave it at, this is what I've heard him saying to me, or it or her, however you want to define God. I'm not going to put God in a box. I don't want to hear what people say, well, the Bible says it's a he. Well, your Bible never said he, because your Bible, wait a minute, let me rephrase that. Your Bible might say that it's a he, but your Bible wasn't God talking necessarily. Your Bible is what man tried to come as close as possible. I should hope that's what he did, that his motives and his intentions were correct, though we know differently to a certain degree based upon history. We should hope that that's what it is, but we don't know. You don't know. It is what it is. I'm not putting a dress on her, and I'm not putting pants on him. I'm not making it a him or a her, but at the same time, I'll refer to God as a he. For me, it just doesn't do it any justice if I call God an it, because God has been so intimately acquainted or so intimately involved in my life. I just can't say it. However, whatever God is to you, whoever God is to you, however you perceive God to be in his or her gender or likeness or whatever, it is what it is. I leave that up to you. But you have to allow me to express and to refer to him in the manner that I do. Let's put it that way. Okay, let's move on from here. The generalities of this season. Generalities. I know that I'm not pronouncing it out right, but that's the way that I want to flow with it. The generalities. Okay. This will be a time like no other. There will be nothing to compare the time that you and I are living in. This will be a time like no other. So do not listen to what people are saying. Do not listen to the words of the people who say differently. Do not believe them. These are the things God was saying to me. There will be some during this season who will do better because of this season. In other words, because of what this season is going to bring forth, because of the changes that are going to come forth in this season, people are going to begin to do better. Certain people. God said there will be some during this season who will be in a better situation because of this season. There will be some who will generate income during this season, but those are the exceptional cases. Those such cases will be the exceptions to what is occurring during this season. Because remember, this season is a season of great loss. This will not be the case for everyone. It will not be the case for most, meaning people living by the exception in this season and generating income, greater income, if at all. Most people will suffer during this season. Most people will lose much during this season. Most people will lose most during this season. This will be a period of great loss. This will be a period where loss will be the norm. The norm will be loss. Not gain, loss. Gain is the exception. On March 22nd, 2020, God spoke to me, and these are some of the generalities that he stated to me, that we're in a shift. Like I've already stated, we're in a shift. We're being taken in a shift, or the shift. The shift is occurring. The divine shift of God, the divine shiftings of God is occurring before us in this season. The shift is creating a flow, and within the shifting, you have the flow. We are in the flow that the shift is producing. No man is producing this. The shift is producing this. You are in a created shift. We are in a created moment of shifting. You are in a creative period of shifting. Again, as I spoke already, this is the season of the undercurrent. There's an undercurrent going on, a flowing beneath the surface, a disturbance beneath the surface of this season. There is an undercurrent going on that is going to force us to flow with it. The undercurrent of this season will take us with the flow. The undercurrent of the flow during this season will take you right in line with the shift. The undercurrent of this season is going to take you with the shift. It's going to take you with the flow of the shift. But for you to experience smoothness, the smoothness within and amid the flowing of this season, within and amid the disruption of this season, you will have to flow in your faith. Your faith is going to have to be applied. Not so that the flow will happen, because the flow is going to happen without you. But if you're going to maintain constant conscious awareness, submission, and participation intellectually, you're going to have to flow in your faith. You are going to have to utilize the faith, your faith, toward me, which is what God said to me during this season, like no other season. Like no other season, our faith is going to have to be put forth. In order to flow with what I am doing during this season, your faith must be applied as never before. You are going to have to trust what I am doing. You are going to have to trust that I am doing what is best. This shifting is creating a current, an undercurrent. The undercurrent of the shift is creating movement, involuntary movement. The involuntary movement of the current is moving you in conjunction with the shift. The current is moving you with the flow of the shift. The shift is flowing, and the current is moving you with the flow of the shift. When I say current, it's saying, or when God said to me current, you have two currents going on. You have the current situation of the pandemic. And with the current situation of the pandemic, there is a current or a flow, a directional flow, a divine direction by which everything in this shift is flowing. So the current season, the current situations within this season, the events of this season, they're moving us with the flow of the shift. And the current within the flow of the shift in our current season is moving us right along how we're supposed to be moving. And this shift is producing that current, that flow, that flowing, that directional pull that's independent of you or me. Your current situation is shifting you. Your current situation that you're going through in this divine season of the pandemic is bringing you in the direction of the shift. Your current is flowing along the direction of the shift. Go with your current. Go with the direction of your current season, this current season. Go with the flow of the current, the direction that life and this season of change, this new dispensation in time is pulling us. God says, go with it. Go with the flow of the current. Go with the flow of your current situation. Your current situation is leading you in the direction of the flow. This current season is leading you in the direction of the flow. So go with it. Go with the flow. Don't fight the flow, but go with the flow. During this season, your faith is necessary for you to flow fluidly. The flow of this season requires your faith. The flow that you are in requires your faith. Your faith is going to be required in order for you to flow fluidly in this shifting flow of this season. We need to remember, God said that this is a rough season. This season will be rough, and it is rough, which is why your faith is necessary during this season. The roughness of this season demands of you to utilize your faith to get through this season with fluidity. Fluidity deals with smoothness of movement, no friction, just flowing. Free flowing, free movement. The smoothness of this season is determined by your faith during this season. The smoothness of the situations that you will face during this season is going to be determined by your faith being utilized throughout this season. This season will be very stormy for you if you do not incorporate your faith. It's going to be stormy within itself. But what God was saying to me is your faith is going to determine your fluidity in this season, how you flow through this season, how rocky, how rough, how rugged, how much friction you have in this season. Because see, if you don't operate in your faith, you're going to be bucking. You're going to be pulling in the opposite direction. It's going to be like you're going against the flow. So there's friction going on, and that friction keeps you from flowing fluidly or freely. God said to me, without the employment of your faith, your flow through this season will be very choppy. This season demands your faith. This season demands the incorporation of your faith in order for you to flow fluidly. God said your faith is not what is creating the shift or the shifting that is occurring in this season, nor is your faith creating the flow that is in conjunction with the shifting that is occurring, but rather the flow, the shift, and the shifting of this season are due to purpose. This entire season is due to what was purposed. Every bit of it, every bit of everything, of every situation, circumstance, and event within this season is due to what I purposed beforehand. This is all due to purpose, due to divine purpose. Both the shifting and the flowing of this season are independent of your faith. Your faith is not the creator of the flow of this season, but rather the flow of this season is all divine. All of it is divine and of a divine nature. The divine current of this season is what is creating the movement. Although the flowing and the shifting of this season are not according to your faith, the fluidity of your flow within the flowing and shifting will be according to your faith. The direction and movement of this season are not created by you, but rather the direction and movements of this season are both involuntary and independent of your faith. But in order for you to flow fluidly in the direction and movements of this season, the conscious employment of your faith is demanded of you throughout the entire course of this season. And let me go again. In order for you to flow fluidly in the direction and movements of this season, the conscious employment of your faith is demanded of you throughout the entire course of this season. What I am doing will not look its best. What I am doing will not feel its best. But what I am doing is what is best. The direction of the current flow is what is best for you. The flow is not against you. The flow is with you. The flow is in sync with your destiny. The flow is in conjunction with your destiny. The current is shifting you. You are not to fight the current of the shift. Do not go against the current. Do not resist the current. Do not resist that which is in your current. Accept your current. Let your current take you. Go with your current. Go with the current. You are in a creative flow. Go with it. Trust where this is taking you. Trust where this is taking you. Your created destiny is creating your current flow in this season. Your destiny is the reasoning of your current flow, your current situation, the direction that your current situation is taking you, where this season is taking you. Your destiny is the creative reasoning of your current flow. On March 29th, God began to speak some other generalities to me. This is not all that he spoke to me, but I'm just dealing with the generalities of this season. God says to me, the prison industry is where brutality is the order of the day. The prison industry is where brutality is the order of the day. Anyone who's ever been in prison, anyone who's ever taken a good look at a prison movie that was based upon truth, the prison system, the prison environment, the prison world is something brutal, or can be something brutal for many. Me being a correctional officer at one point in time and an institutional chaplain, a prison chaplain, I understand the inner workings of the prison industry. Personally, I do. Many understand it better than I do, but I've always had a heart since maybe 21 years old. I had a heart for those in institutions, in prisons. For some reason, I always had it, but now I understand it was God. For juvenile delinquents, for those men and women or teenagers who were locked up, I've always had a heart for them and wanted to help them. And those people were me at one time. And I should have been behind bars many times over throughout my lifetime. God used all of those periods of my life to shape and form me to where I am and to who I am today. But the prison system, God said to me on March 29th, the prison industry is where brutality is the order of the day. It is where brutality has become the norm. But the prison system will be humbled. God said the prison system will be humbled. The prison system will be brought to its knees. The prison system will be brought to its lowest point in this season. Through this season, many will cry over the prison system. Many will cry over the prison industry. The prison industry is to be of concern. The prison industry, the prison system will suffer greatly. The prison system will suffer great loss. Many of the losses will be of no doing on the part of those who will be lost during this season. Their deaths will be of no reason of their own. Many within the prison system will receive their release during this season. Now we've begun to see that actually happen. Many people are being released because of what's going on. Many will be released because of new sanctions, but many will be released because of deaths. Some will be released, in other words, I take it by way of getting an early release. Others will be released due to their deaths, because of their deaths. Many will die, both staff and inmates. The prison system will have its own cry, a cry like never before. The deaths and the sick will be alarming throughout the prison industry. The deaths and the sick within the prison industry will be pathetic. The deaths and the sickness within the prison industry will be a pandemic within itself. The pandemic season will break up gangs. Gangs will be dismantled during this season. This season will break up bullying, racism, and bring groups together, groups that were at odds with each other, groups that could not get along, groups that hated each other. This season will bring people to their knees. People will be brought to their knees. People will be brought to a state of humility. This virus must complete itself. God says this virus must complete itself. We're not going to cut this virus short. We're not going to take the legs from up under this virus. This virus is on a course that must complete itself. There is nothing that anyone can do to keep this virus from spreading. Nothing that anyone can do to keep this virus from spreading. It must complete its course. It must finish its course. It reminds me of Judas. Well, could Judas have done anything to change the course of what he was supposed to do in selling Jesus out? No. Judas had to take the course that he took. He had to complete what he was set and sent forth to do. Could Pharaoh have changed his mind with Moses? No. Why? Because according to your scriptures, it states that God said well over 10 times at least that I am going to harden his heart so that he won't let you go. So how can you do what God has not done? How can Balaam and Balak being the king of whatever nation it was? I want to say the Philistines, but I could be all wrong. But the prophet Balaam said, how can I curse whom God has not cursed? What can I do if God has not first done it? I can't do it. I can only do that which God has done. And if God has done it, then I can't do differently. He says, no one can rebuke either the virus or this season away. God says, your rebuking is not going to send this virus away. Your binding and all of this other stuff is not going to send this virus away. And I think we should all see that and realize that by now. And this season is not going anywhere. And it's not. No one can pray this away. If we would stop thinking that our prayers are this hocus pocus or this Simon says, God plays our Simon says, we say it and God does it. We name it and God, we name it, we claim it and God says, yes, sir, and submit to it. If we stop thinking that we are running everything by our own words, if we are, then all the rebuking and spitting that church folk have done in regards to this virus in this season, there should be no one dying of this virus now. And surely members of the church shouldn't be dying. And surely the president, the church's chosen vessel, their Cyrus, though I say our Nebuchadnezzar, their Cyrus is put forth, and he's a resemblance of Cyrus. Then explain to me when Cyrus caught a virus, when Cyrus was made subject to, other than perhaps in history when they were ultimately overcome by the Greeks. And I don't even know if Cyrus was still reigning at the time that the Greeks conquered. But anyway, no one can pray this away. I've been saying this from day one. No one will be able to pray this away. No one will be able to pray this away. Now there are people echoing what I'm saying. Some are echoing it as though they were the ones who said it first. There were people who argued with me, several, not argued with me, but they didn't agree and it was hard to convince them otherwise. But now they're saying it with more seemingly open zeal than I am. And it's even being stated back to me as though, I'm being whatever. But no one can pray this away. No one can speak this away. This thing must run its course. It must. The events of this season must go forth. The events of this season must occur. This season is not going away. This season is not going away until it has gone its course. This season must run its course. There is nothing that anyone can do to take back the things of this season, or should I say to turn back the things of this season. No one is going to be able to turn back the things of this season. It is what it is, and this is what it's going to be. This season will complete itself. We're not going to tell this season when it's complete. We don't get to dictate to this season. That's what's messing the church up, because they feel that they're losing their authority. They feel that they're losing their power, their God-given rights, their constitutional given rights Why? Because they can't control it. They can't dictate to it. And then they become victims to our society. Now, we're going to go through a persecution period. Arm yourselves. We're going through a persecution period. Oh, is that what it is? Now you're the persecuted. You were the ones always out there persecuting everybody else, prosecuting everybody else, being the judge, jury, and whatever to everybody else, executioner to everyone else. Now you're saying we're being persecuted. Woe is us. This is not a woe is us. Maybe it's the principle of sowing and reaping. This season must run the course that is set before it. No human hands or human means will be able to stop the spreading of this. The events of this season will spread. The events of this season will be widespread. Nothing that humans can do will stop the spread of this season. The spread of this season is inevitable. This is a period of humility. This is a period where humility will become central. This is a period where humility will be the central focus. This is a period where humility will become the central focal point. This is a period where humility will become the order of the day. Humility. This is a period of quiet humbleness. Quiet humbleness. This is a period of quietly humbling yourself. This is a period where everyone will be required to humble themselves. Everyone will be required to humble themselves during this season. That goes from the president to everyone else in the White House, to Congress, Senate, the Supreme Court, all local, state levels. Humility, humble. We will all be humbled in this period, in this season. This is a period of quietly humbling yourself. This is a period where everyone will be required to humble themselves. Everyone will be required to humble themselves. Humility will be brought to its forefront. Align yourself with this season. Go with the season, because this is a period of alignment. This is a period where things will align themselves. This is a period where people will begin to align themselves. They'll begin to align themselves with me. This is people's opportunity to align themselves with me. This is a time of personal alignment. This is a period of you aligning yourself. You and your family, you aligning yourself with your family, and you and your family aligning yourself with me. This is a period of you and the members of your household coming into alignment with each other. This season will be a season of destruction. There will be destruction all around you. There will be destruction throughout industries. Industries will be destroyed. Businesses will be derailed. Businesses will be dismantled. Businesses will be undone. This is not a period of recovery. Most businesses will not return. Most businesses will not recover from this season. This is not a period of personal greed. Personal greed will not have place in this period, though people will continue to be greedy. The greed of the people will continue to be on display, but their greed will cost them. Whatever people will gain in their greed will be lost due to their greed, for greed will have no place during this season. All those who are out here gouging people for the basic necessities, the daily necessities, the required things, you will have your day as a result of doing such. Your greed is going to cost you more than what perhaps the pandemic would have cost you just in general. Your greed is going to cost you more. Whether you're in the church house still bullying, pulling, and tricking, or whether you out here on the streets, or whether it's the light company, the electric company, or the phone companies, or whoever, the gas companies, whatever, whoever, greed will have no place during this season. This is not a season to take advantage of anyone. God says this is not a season to take advantage of anyone. This is not a season to be taking advantage of anyone in any way. You know someone is being good to you and you're taking advantage of them. You know that someone has been good to you, has been forgiven to you, has been good to you throughout the years, and that God has used that person for you and in your life, and you're taking advantage because you can. God says this is not a season that anyone wants to be taking advantage of anyone. Taking advantage of anyone during this season will be costly. People who take advantage of others during this season will suffer great loss. The loss will be great. During this season, devastation will cover the earth. Devastation will be throughout every region of the world. Devastation will be the order of the day throughout this season. Devastation will be the expected norm. Devastation will have its greatest effect in America. America will have the greatest devastating effects of all nations. America will be a place of great dismay. The world will be dismayed at America. All nations will look at America in dismay. Now understand this here. This was in March when God told me this here. I did not understand what he was saying, but I wrote down what I heard him saying, that devastation will have its greatest effects in America, and that America would have the greatest devastating effects than all other nations, and that the world would look at the United States in dismay. God showed me, or said to me, death will be on your left and your right. He said, the world will be standing looking at America, and they will shake their heads in disgust, in shame, looking at America, shaking their heads in shame, as though saying, shame on you. God said that America would be on a world stage. Here he says America will be a place of great dismay. People are dismayed at us. They're ashamed to even be affiliated with us. They're embarrassed for us because we're too crazy to be embarrassed for ourselves. They're dismayed at us. How can a nation so great as America, who once supposedly knew God and was a nation under God, united America, no, a divided America from the beginning. The world will be dismayed at America. All nations will look at America with dismay. Do you not think that they're not now looking at us in dismay? How did I know way back in March that we were not going to wear masks, or even at that time that we were going to have to wear masks? There was a point in time near somewhere around the 28th or 29th when God told me on this day or whatever that we weren't going to come out of this, and that it was going to be a rough period and a long period, and this virus is not going away. And I started looking at television at that time now at other nations, and it was looking so funny to see people in Korea and to see people in China, and maybe those are the only two places that I saw it. They were wearing masks, and then one Sunday they began to let them loose from having lockdowns, and we weren't locked down or anything at that time. We weren't even wearing masks. And these people on a Sunday were all coming out, just hundreds and thousands walking the streets because they were so happy to be off lockdown, and they were all wearing masks. And I'm just like, look at this. Wow. And I said, I wonder if we'll ever get to that point. I went and started ordering masks then, before anybody ever said wear masks or don't buy the PPE gear because we need those for certain people. No, sir. I went out there and started buying and was being looked at funny by people at Walmart because I was walking in the stores with gloves on, with masks on. Look, You don't have to tell me once God says to me, you don't have to tell me. I didn't wait on them to give the green light to go do this here. I went and did it. But nowhere at that time, at no point at that time in March, would I have known that there would be great dismay and people would look at the United States and shake their head, and that we will be on a world stage and that the world will be looking at us the way that the world is now. No way could I have seen or known the amount of deaths that have occurred since and the amount of sickness, other than the fact of what God was telling me right here on this very day. But that the world would be dismayed. And now the world looks at us and say, America, they're fools. They're full of fools. They have a president that's off the hook. They got a party of people, or a dual party of people who are just, have no backbone, no nothing. And then you have states doing their own thing. You have people dying, people getting sick, and America won't do anything. What is wrong with these crazy fools? But anyway, we'll keep moving and we'll hit that later. I suppose this season will be filled with events, and we've seen this to be true. Within the actual event of this season in general, there will be many events, and the recovery phase is one of the events of this season. What God said to me, and I will get to it, but right here, he says here, within the actual event of this season, which is the pandemic, the virus in general, there will be many events within the one event of the pandemic or the virus. And the recovery is going to be one of those events as well. God is saying there's going to be so many events, so many, so MANY, so many events within this one general event of the pandemic. In other words, the pandemic, God said to me, is just the backdrop of all that will be going on. Everything that will be going on in the backdrop, with the backdrop of the pandemic. God says, when I say that this entire season of events must run its course, which includes the recovery process as well. God says this entire season of events must run its course. When I say that it must run its course, its full course, it includes the recovery process as well. The recovery process is part of the overall course of this season. In other words, this season doesn't end when the virus ceases to exist, if it ever does. But this season includes the recovery process as well, which is, from what I can see, apparently this is part of what makes this season so extensively long. It's extensively long. It's going to be long within itself, but then add in the recovery process as well. Man, all that is being torn down has to somehow be recovered and replaced. All of this is going to take the process of time. God says there will be many who will make it through this season and recover. There will be many who will come through this season and recover from it. However, there will be many who will not come through this season. There will be many more who will not recover from this season. Many will not recover from this season. Many will not see their recovery after this season. Many will not have a successful recovery. If recovery for this season were to be a complete success, if recovery from this season were to be a complete success, then people would not benefit from the season itself. The events of this season must be devastating. In order for the people to learn from this season, the events of this season must be crushing. This season is a learning event. This entire season is a learning event that is meant to teach. Teaching will be wrought through this life or through the life events of this season. The life events of this season will be the teachers in this season. This is an eye-opening season. People's eyes will be open during this season. People's eyes will be forced open. People will attempt to hide from what they see in this season. They will attempt to hide from the devastation of this season, but they will not be able to. You can close your eyes and act as though you don't see it and as though it's none of it is happening, but it is still happening. It is still here, and you are going to have to not only see it, but experience it. This will be a season of truth. This will be a season where truth will spring forth from every direction. Truth will begin to spring forth from every sector of society. Truth will begin to spring forth in devastating fashion. I think that's what's happening with all of these race issues and all of these systemic issues when it comes to demographics and all. It's rising up. Truth is coming forth from every direction, from every sector of society, and it's ugly truth. And we don't want to admit that truth, and we don't want to face that truth. Truth will begin to spring forth in devastating fashion. The truth that will spring forth will be devastating. It will have devastating effects. The truth is going to destroy throughout this season. People will be destroyed because of the truth that will come forth during this season. I can see some of that in what that could be speaking towards. If you've been living a lie and you've built your wealth or your ivory towers on that lie, man, the truth is going to destroy everything that you've worked for, everything that you were able to fabricate with your lies and your deception. If your office, if your political office, if your job as a manager or an employee or an employer, if all of that was built upon a lie, if your gains from the stock market were due to insider trading and all, and you and your boys were able to build your wealth based upon insider trades and whatever other handshakes you had going on, that deception, when the truth manifests itself in this season, in which it will, when the truth does that, you're going to be devastated because you're going to lose a lot, because the truth is going to unveil and you're not going to be able to pay for the things that you purchase based upon your ungodly gain. People will be devastated by the truth that will come forth. People will be forced to admit the devastating truth of this season. People will be forced to see and admit the devastating truth that will come forth during this season. People will be forced to see and to admit the devastation that will touch every sector of every society during this season. Every society, that's worldwide, apparently, every society will receive its share of suffering. Every society will receive its share of suffering, but no society will be equal. No society will be equal in its degree of suffering. No society will be spared of its woes. Every society will receive its share of woes. The events of this season will bring the mightiest to their knees. The events of this season will bring the most powerful to their knees. This season will humble the most influential. Many in power will lose their positions. They will lose their positions of power. Many will be shifted into position. Many will be positioned into position through the shift that is occurring. This is a season where people will be moved into position, into their rightful positions. People have been petitioned to move into position. People who have been petitioned, that means divinely petitioned, called forth, called out, called into, will be put into position. No one will be saved through their influence. Your influence is not going to work. No one will be saved through their position. No one will be saved because of their riches. This is not a season of exemption. This is a season where everyone, including you, church folk, this is a season where everyone is subject to the events of this season. No one is exempt from this season. No one is exempt in this season. Everyone is within reach during this season. Everyone is subject to the events of this season. No man will have an island to himself where he can escape all of this. If you as a human being are on that island, you're still part of this season and it won't exempt you. Okay. This message on March 31st was when I see here in my notes here that this message was spoken to me the morning that I had the vision/dreams or dream minutes thereafter. Now, understand, I'm not going to talk about the vision of the dream now, but you will see a recording there called the vision/dream that I had. But that is a very, 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 very interesting thing there. I won't go into detail on it, but within this, what God was showing me, this part of this is the revelation of what God was explaining to me, what I had just experienced. But anyway, I'm going to speak from that only in regards to the generalities of this season. Okay, I will not explain the vision or dream in this one. There will be a separate set of recordings in their own subtitle, the vision/dream. Many businesses will close for good because of the direct impact of this season upon the business world financially. Many other businesses will close. Now, this was March 31st, 2020. Okay. I didn't know anything about anything. I don't keep up with the business world. I don't own a stock or a bond. Many other businesses will close because of the sheer toll of death. Many owners and CEO members of businesses will cease in their existence. Many workers will not return. Many workers will not return due to death. Many workers will have no place to return to. And we're seeing that now. How was I supposed to know not March 31st that people would lose their jobs and whatever and whatever and whatever? But anyway, we see now that this has occurred. There will be no place for people to return to because the doors of their workplaces will be completely and permanently shut. The economy will suffer greatly during this season. There will not be a bounce back in the economy. We need to cut this out where we'll just go through this little whatever and it'll be nothing and we'll just bounce back and we'll come back being greater than we ever were before. No, God said to me, there will not be a bounce back in the economy, at least not in the next foreseeable future. Now, somewhere in the course of life, but we're not talking about down the road, way down there just yet. You got to remember, it's good to paint a picture about what's going to come. But before that comes, you got to go through this here. OK, before Jesus was able to get back to the Father. So how it said, or rise above or rise to the point that he could draw all men. He said, except I be lifted up, I can't draw all men to me. In other words, before I can draw the world to me, I first have to be lifted up. Well, lifted up how? He's talking about the cross. He's talking about his death. He's talking about going through, of course, Samaria, going into Jerusalem and being crucified, being tortured, being everything that they supposedly recorded regarding him. He couldn't get to the cross except he first went through that other stuff. And he couldn't get to the greater stuff until he completed the mission on the cross. We're wanting to talk about everything that's coming after the cross, but we need to know what's coming on the front side of the cross. And on the front side of the cross, there will be no bounce back in the economy. The economy will not bounce back. The economy will not bounce back quickly. People will bounce back, but the economy will not quickly. The economy will not bounce back quickly. There will be a long economic struggle. The economic struggle throughout this season will continue even beyond this season. The local economies will see a shortage like they have never seen before. There will be a shortage in every area. There will be a decline in every area of the economy. During this season, the assistance will begin to fade away. People will experience hunger, and now we're seeing that. People will be hungry throughout this season. This season will put a demand on the food supply. And now people who are into feeding the hungry and the poor and the needy and whatever, they're saying they've never seen where their supplies look as depleted as they look now. And no matter how much they give out, more people are coming. You hear about people in lines receiving food in the midst of a pandemic, and they're saying, I've never had to do this here. I don't even know how it feels. It's very humbling to go through this here, to be in this position. And I can't help myself because I need this. He says people will struggle to eat. People will struggle for basic necessities, and there will be no assistance. There will be no assistance rendered. The assistance will cease. The assistance will cease. I can't tell you exactly why it will, but perhaps part of it is because there won't be stuff coming out of the fields. There won't be food being resupplied. There won't be the supply won't be there, or because people won't have the money or whatever, the goods to even donate. The time is coming where death will become commonplace. The time is coming where death will become commonplace. During this season, death will be seen as being common. During this season, it will be nothing to see death. Death will lose its impact. Death will no longer have its impact. You're kind of seeing that now that we're over 200,000 deaths in America and over 1 million in the world. And that's only the honest deaths. That's not including all the deaths that are probably 2 or 3 times higher than all of that. That's not even being reported, especially here in the United States. But you see now people don't even respond to the daily deaths that are occurring. We got 9,000. At one point we were having 3,000, and then 2,000 plus, and then 1,000 plus. And now we're under 1,000. Sometimes, some days we're at 1,000 or at 13, 14, 1,500. And those again are just the honest recordings. So don't even let that lure you into the deception of the true numbers, okay? Death will no longer have its impact. Death will no longer be experienced the way that it once was. People don't even move toward the deaths now. They don't even care whether it's the president or all those. Even the church is not even sending out a cry regarding the deaths that have occurred. Death will no longer be experienced the way that it once was. You can't even bury people now, or you can, but then it's not the way that you used to. Some people can't bury other people. They're digging mass graves, but I'll go into that when I deal with the vision and the dream. Death will no longer be experienced the way that it was. Death will no longer be an issue. People don't even see death as an issue now. Death will no longer be viewed as an issue. People will no longer respond to death in the same manner. During this season, death will lose its relevance. The human mindset as it relates to death will be totally different. The human mindset as it relates to death will be totally different. The human mind will be desensitized as it relates to death. The human mind will be deeply traumatized. The season of death, or this season of death, will completely traumatize the human psyche. This is a period of deep mourning. This is a period of mourning that has never been experienced. The world has never experienced the mourning that will take place during this season. This will be a period of deep groaning. The groans of the people will be deep. The groans of the people will be widespread. It will be widespread. But no other place will experience the deep groans of this season as the United States will. Let me reread that. No other place will experience the deep groans of this season as the United States will. The United States will have the deepest groans of any nation. No nation will come close to the devastation of the United States. The earth will groan for the dead. Human remains will be scattered throughout the earth. The earth will be filled with human remains. The earth will be scattered with the remains of the dead. There will be dead all around. The dead will fill the earth. Death will reach every extent of the earth. Death will reach to the furthest extent of the earth. There will be no extent, no length that death does not reach. This is a season of death. This is a season where death will take its toll. The toll of death will be great. There will be a great toll as it relates to death. Death will visit the sick and the healthy, the poor and the wealthy, the powerful and the non-relevant. There will be houses of death. Houses will be considered a house of death because of the many members who will die within those houses. Houses will be filled with death. Complete households will cease in their existence. Every member of some household will experience death. Every member of some household will experience death. In other words, in some household, every member within that household will die. During this period, sickness will run rampant. Sickness. I remember God saying there will be sickness outside of the sickness of the virus, and then there's sickness related to the virus that was not prior to the virus that will come from the virus. And we see that happening with the long-term sickness and stuff that is occurring now as a result of those who contracted the virus. During this period, sickness will run rampant. Sickness will run rampant in the United States. The United States will see its share of sickness from this virus. Now, this was March 31st, so we weren't seeing it like that, but God was telling me the United States will see its share of sickness from this virus. The numbers will top every other nation. Now, how was I supposed to know that the United States would end up leading on March 31st, that our numbers would top every other nation in the world? When I was telling people this, they were just kind of like, what? Yeah, right. Okay. Well, now we see that the numbers within the United States have topped every other nation, whether it's the number of sick or whether it's the number of dead. We have topped every other nation, just as God spoke to me. People will suffer greatly, and people are suffering greatly. And family members say how they're suffering now that their family member is sick, how they're suffering now that their family member is dead, that their family members were suffering as they were suffering through the sickness of the virus. And I didn't notice about that virus at that time, how people would suffer and people were fighting for their life and they weren't able to breathe and they felt like they were choking or drowning in their own fluid in their lungs and stuff. I didn't know any of that. People will feel the effects of the sickness greatly. Sickness will take its toll on the people. The coronavirus will only be one of the sicknesses during this season. The coronavirus will only be one of the sicknesses during this season. There will be several sicknesses during this season. Sickness will overwhelm the governments of this country. This country will be overwhelmed by the number of sicknesses during this season. There will be other underlying factors related to the sickness of the coronavirus. People's other underlying factors and issues will go unnoticed and unaddressed. Because of this, there will be a greater number of deaths during this period. General medical care will not be relevant during this season. There will be no space to address the other factors pertaining to the virus, which will lead to even greater deaths and increased sickness. Several things in that. One of the things that came into fruition was that they began to cut all of my and my family members' doctor's appointments and dental appointments and other medical related appointments. They began to cut all of those things away, and I have not gone into a VA hospital or any other type hospital since the virus took off. So since the month of March, I've not gone in anywhere. Not that I want to go, but the appointments that I did have, which were a good many, were all canceled and still canceled. And they're doing it over the phone and over the internet and all. But now you can't even get in to see people for the smallest of things or the greatest of things. And then they tell you, you don't want to come here. I've had maybe 20 calls, if not more, saying, do not come to the hospital. Do not come to the hospital. They don't want you to come to the hospital because it is a known fact of what is going on and what is happening. So they're telling people, do not come. We don't want you to come here. We don't want you to get sick. And I tell them quick, I don't want to come and I don't want to get sick. So it is what it is. But anyway, also within that, if you have underlying factors or factors that were there prior to the virus, well, of course, we realize now that you're going to have more issues with the virus, and also you're not going to be able to be seen due to those issues. But then also in that, the virus itself is causing more factors to be underlining, to become your underlying factors and issues related to the virus. And they're not even going to be able to address those things right now because they're too busy fighting the current virus itself. They don't even have space to even deal with the things that are coming outside of the virus or because of the virus. So because of this, there will be a greater number of deaths during this period. General medical care will not be relevant during this season. There will be no space to address the other factors pertaining to the virus, which will lead to even greater deaths and increased sicknesses. During this season, medical attention will be very scarce. Of course, we see that now. It will be very difficult for people to get medical care. And we're seeing that now. And then we're seeing where they're cutting away Medicaid and many other services that were once available. So it's a mess. People will suffer during this season because of other factors in relation to their health. Throughout the course of this season, the coronavirus will not be the only cause of death. People with pre-existing conditions will see death, as well as people with non-pre-existing conditions. Death will have no respect. Death will come in whatever form it comes. During this season, many husbands will lose their wives. Many wives will lose their husbands. Many children will lose their parents. Many parents will lose their children. This type of experience will occur throughout the earth. The earth will be filled with this type of experience, and we see that now. Death will become commonplace during this season. It will be more common to hear of one's death than it will be to hear of them still being alive. Let me say that again. It will become more common to hear of one's death than it will be to hear of the fact that they are still alive. When this season is over, it will be strange to see parents and siblings still existing. It will become stranger to see one's parents and siblings still living than it will be to hear of their deaths. In other words, it will be more common to hear of the death of family members than it will be to hear of family members still living. Those who do not experience their own death will experience the effects of death. The effects of death will be devastating. There will be devastating effects upon people who are left to experience the deaths or the death of others during this period. There will be little regard for the lives of others. People's regard for life will be non-existent. People's lives will no longer matter. And now we see that people's lives don't even matter. The amount of deaths that have happened doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter. We're just going on about business as usual. Let's just open up everything, forget everything. Wear the mask if you want. Don't wear it if you don't want. No big deal. It's all good. It is what it is. The ones who died, oh, well, they were going to die anyway. What the heck? Human life will lose its value. Human life will cease in its value. Human life will no longer have value. Well, I've said a lot there, but I want to pick up from there as we continue forward, because we have more to say on many more generalities of this season. I'm just speaking on the generalities of this season. That's all I'm doing, trying to get us awake and aware of what is happening without charging you to do so. I want as many people who want to hear this to hear it and to learn from it, to glean from it. So until the next one, please stay conscious of what you're hearing. Get it in you. Get a conviction from it. Allow God to expand and expound upon that which you're hearing. Allow God to speak to you personally. And until then, until the next recording, do that. Stay conscious.